Issue 3 of the Rise of Kylo Ren is out, and man, I continue to love every bit of this tale as we watch Ben Solo descend further into his future role as Kylo Ren, Master of the Knights of Ren. In the previous comic, Ren told Ben Solo to meet him on Varnak, located in the Mid-Rim, and that's where we immediately pick up here, skipping over the lightsaber duel between the 3 Jedi students for now. Vikril, the Knight of Ren who looks like Kylo Ren, notices that Ben Solo has arrived, and we see Ren himself say, "Well, look who it is." It's clear to me that Ben Solo isn't some sure thing to this group from the start. Ben Solo took some time getting to Varnak, which Ren mentions, and Ben only says that he was held up. Ren kinda jokes around with Ben, talking about how bad he looks. And Ben actually takes this joke literally, trying to explain what happened and why he is late. And I thought this exchange was interesting. Reason being is that Ben Solo is extremely nervous right now. It's because Ren is intimidating to look at. He's talking to Ben through his helmet. Ren takes it off, admitting that the mask is kind of intense, but that's the whole point. And I think it gives us more of a clear indication as to why Kylo Ren created that style of mask that he did. After all, his grandfather is basically the boogeyman from the Star Wars universe. He's a symbol of fear. Now, Ren, not wanting to intimidate a potential recruit right off the bat, says that maybe they will be friends, and at least that's what Snoke thinks, and that Ben Solo should relax. And now, since they don't have much time, Ren gets right to it and says not many people seek out the Knights of Ren, and those who do often regret it. So he wants to know what Ben Solo wants, and he calls him his maybe friend, which is kind of sad to me given the circumstances surrounding his previous few days. Ben is literally alone as he sees it right now. Ben, just being honest, says that he wants to travel with them and learn, and he mentions that he can be useful because he is strong in the, and then before he can finish, Ren cuts him off, saying that he remembers that Ben is strong in the shadow. He reflects back on their first meeting at the outpost. Ren is kind of playing with Ben right now, at least that's kind of how I see it, testing out how he might react to him, and he says Snoke said maybe he is something special, but that is just a lot of maybes. And he finally brings up the price it takes to join the Knights of Ren. Just like we saw in issue 1, the price is a good death, and Ben Solo finally says that he's killed a Jedi. As far as we know, this is the only Jedi he's killed himself at this point in his backstory. Luke survived the Hutt, and it's still kind of up in the air as far as what truly caused the explosion at Luke's Academy. At least it is for me. Ren asks if it's Skywalker because he has his doubts that he's dead just like Snoke did, but Ben says that it was somebody else. After this, Ren gathers the Knights around because he thinks this story might be interesting, and he asks Ben if he wants to tell them who he was killed, and Ben says alright. Now, before we get into the next part, I'd say that it's obvious that Ben Solo isn't happy about what has transpired between him and the Jedi. In fact, I'd say that he looks completely defeated, which reminds me of how he felt after he murdered his own father. When he kills, it tears him apart inside. Finally, we are back in the Outer Rim on Elphrona, at the old Jedi outpost from the High Republic era. Ben explains that the 3 remaining Jedi from Luke's Academy had followed him there, Ty, Vo, and Hennix, and that these Jedi were students of Luke Skywalker, which sort of confuses Ren for a moment, who says, wait, weren't you also one of Skywalker's students at that temple he built? But Ben goes on to explain that he destroyed the temple, that it's burned, and that's why the other students are after him. As he says the words, "Instead, I killed," Ren cuts him off, because he needs to figure out some way to truly know if this is a good death in his eyes, something worthy of the Knights of Ren. Ren wants Ben to tell him who these Jedi were to him, what kind of relationship he had, and we dive far into the past to Luke's Academy with Ben Solo, the youngest we have ever seen him. Ben says that at first, there was only himself and Luke, but soon after, more came, these individuals being the young Force-sensitive children, Vo, Ty, and Hennix, and we can see them all learning a lesson about levitating rocks. And if you notice, all of them are doing it except for Vo, which is important. She seems to struggle. Ben states that Vo couldn't accept her place in the Force, and we see Vo as a child being frustrated that Ben Solo is stronger than she is. We do see Master Skywalker trying to get through to Vo about the idea of being stronger not being the point. But as we see through the next few cells that take place over what looks like years, Vo has always had this adversarial nature with Ben, always trying to beat him. What's sort of profound is how Ben reflects on Vo while talking to Ren. He says that Vo should have focused on being who she is, being herself and not trying to be Ben, or trying to be better than he is. Ben says that he thinks that her awareness of wanting to be better than Ben caused her shame, and that Jedi shouldn't feel such feelings. What's odd is I don't really sense any hatred towards Vo from Ben. He just thinks that she tries too hard, and it's ironic in a sense because that's something Kylo Ren ends up doing when he's on the dark side. We then move on to Ben talking about Hennix, which was a nice part of the comic. Ben thought Hennix was smart and funny, and unlike Vo, who thought the Force was a contest, Hennix looked at the Force like it was some kind of a puzzle. We see Hennix in this flashback trying to unlock a holocron with Luke overseeing the entire experience. I thought these few cells were really neat, and when the holocron opened to show some old Jedi figure, I loved Hennix saying, "Whoa." It just made me laugh as I was reading. But ultimately, again, we can tell that there's no ill feelings towards Hennix as he tells his story to Ren. I think even Ren himself was sensing this because we pulled back out of Ben's reveries with Ren saying, "What about the third one?" and that he's already forgotten his name. And here's where I think the comic ventures into that melancholic vibe, which is very much that Ben Solo Kylo Ren thing. We flash back to see Ty and Ben relaxing near a stream of water, and they seem like friends. Ty asks Ben why he hides so much of himself, and Ben counters Ty saying that he puts everything he is out there. But Ty's ability in the Force allows him to sense certain things about people, and he tells Ben that he has this box inside of him where he has locked away things. Now, for me, what's super weird about this is that I just recently watched Dr. Sleep, that film, for the first time, where Danny from The Shining locks away his demons and boxes in his mind, so this whole exchange took on a real funky meaning for me at first. Anyway, even though he says, everyone has this thing, he says that Ben's is locked real tight. And finally, Ben tells him, "You know why." Now, before I go further, I'd like to say that as I mentioned in my first review, Ty's like this in-universe redemptionist, and of course, this is going to change, unfortunately. But it's sad to see that Ben did have some kind of confidant or friend at one time, and that it got snuffed out after this huge misunderstanding. Ben tells Ty that he locks away things because of who he is, being Ben Solo, the kid named after legends. It's overwhelming for him. Plus, I'd argue that around this time is when Ben Solo learned about his bloodline and his connection to the dark side. Ty is telling Ben to embrace who he is, and that he knows him, and that he's not as bad as he thinks he is. Ben, not so sure, asks Ty if he's really sure about that. Essentially, Ty is trying to be Ben's friend here, and get him outside of his head. Now, even though we as the reader have gotten all of this information, all Ben Solo really has said to Ren was, "Ty was Ty." Ren says cryptic, but he thinks that he gets the picture, which makes him say get back to the fight which occurred at the outpost. Apparently, Ty was trying to get into Ben Solo's mind, which caused Ben to force push back Ty really hard against a wall. All the while, Solo was parrying both lightsabers from Vo and Hennix. Finally, Ben Solo jumps ridiculously high to another area of the outpost, saying to just let him go. But now that we know Vo's nature, she's not about to give up this fight with Ben. Vo says that it's too late to just let him go, and she leaps after him, leaving Hennix behind. Hennix is unable to use the Force in that way, and this causes him fear because he doesn't want Vo to face Ben Solo alone. Vo is exceptionally self-righteous to such a degree that I actually dislike her, and not in the sense that I think that she's a badly written character, but in the sense that she's written in a way that we're supposed to find her arrogance irritating, I think, and I think it's working. She wants Ben Solo to pay for the murder of Luke Skywalker, but we know better as the reader. She calls Ben a murderer, which is insane to him. The only reason any of this is happening is because Luke chose to ignite his lightsaber over Ben Solo while he slept. Luke Skywalker almost murdered his own nephew, and as far as Ben is concerned, it looked like his uncle was going to carry through with the act, and he acted in self-defense. So far, in this entire comic run, Ben Solo has essentially acted out of self-defense. Like I said in my last review, he's a man out of options. Ben Solo screams out at Vo, asking her if that's what she wants him to be, a murderer, and he says fine, finally losing control and pushing her literally over the edge of a cliff. And Hennix sees this, completely shocked by what he's seeing. Ben himself, realizing what he's done, says no, and he reaches out to catch Vo, freezing her from her fall momentarily. We see Ty looking on, also screaming please no, and Hennix has almost caught up to Ben. Ben can barely keep Vo from falling, and unfortunately, Hennix has no idea that Ben Solo has stopped Vo from falling to her death. Hennix thinks she's already dead and throws his saber at Ben like a helicopter blade, trying to cut him in half, calling him a monster. This forces Ben to lose focus on Vo and she begins to fall again, and Ben Solo uses the Force seemingly just to redirect the saber back towards Hennix, fatally wounding him. And it looks like Hennix was trying to use whatever knowledge he may have learned out of the holocron when he saw that the blade was heading towards him. However, it failed, and we see Ben notice what has happened to his former companion from the Academy. Ty barely saves Vo from her fall with the Force, but they both heard the final cry from Hennix. Ben is immediately upon the both of them, demanding that they get in the outpost. And as Ty asks Ben what happened to Hennix, Ben uses the Force to push them all the way back into the outpost. From the way it was drawn, it looks like it was fast and just insane, like he just completely pushed them 100 miles an hour. And we see Ben reaching out towards the exterior walls of the outpost as he begins to use the Force to make it collapse around Vo and Ty, trapping them. And at this point, his tale is over. The Knights and Ren himself aren't impressed because, although it was a death, it wasn't something that Ben truly wanted to have happen. Putting his helmet back on, Ren tells Ben that either way Snoke vouched for him and being strong in the shadow is important to him, so that for now it's better to just get used to one another. See how the Knights like Ben, and see how Ben likes the Knights. And the hope is that Ben Solo will find a good death after all. I also love this exchange between Ren and Kuruk. He says that Ben looks like an actual pile of garbage and that he needs to get new clothes and that the Knights of Ren have a reputation to uphold. It was absurd in the right way for me. And again, like I said in the previous review, Ren reminds me of this like dark side Han Solo-esque kind of guy. You know, the way he talks and the way he deals with people. Now, I'm not gonna lie, seeing Ben Solo drawn this way in this next frame was incredible. I love this look for Ben. He is slowly transitioning over to this new persona, but it's so reminiscent of his father in so many ways. And as we saw in The Rise of Skywalker, Ben Solo truly is Han Solo's son in every respect, and I like seeing this motif carry through the comics as well. Finally, Ren goes up to Ben, saying it's time for them to find something to burn, and that's it. Now back at the outpost, Ty and Vo, using the Force, escape from all the debris that fell around them. Ultimately, they are successful, and Ty tells Vo that he looked into Ben's mind and he knows where he's going, that he went to the Knights of Ren thinking that they could help him find his path. Vo, in anger, states that she doesn't care about where his path takes him, that she only cares about where it ends. Vo wants revenge on Ben, again proving how much of a Jedi she isn't, and Ty has almost lost his way as well, but we shall see what happens between Ty and Ben. My gut instinct is that not only will Ben Solo ultimately kill Ren, the current leader of the Knights, but that he will also wind up killing Ty, his former confidant, at the Jedi Academy before everything went to hell. The last frame we see is Hennix now deceased on the ground with a gaping wound in his torso where the lightsaber blade struck him down. It reminds me a lot of Ben Solo's wound from Rey on the Death Star ruins, and that was kind of gross to me. So good job at conveying that in the comic. Now, I gotta say, this issue's only problem to me is that it feels super short. Not sure if other people felt the same way. I wish we had gotten a bit more backstory in the issue regarding Luke's temple and the history between Ben and the other Jedi, but beyond that, I think Solo has continued to deliver Ben Solo's story perfectly. Even after 3 issues, Ben Solo's descent into his own hell is littered with misunderstandings and people manipulating him in ways that he's not even aware of. We keep seeing glimpses of the potential for evil to emerge in him, but I'd say that this series so far continues to imply that it never had to be this way had there never been that one gigantic misunderstanding in the Hutt. So that's my review of The Rise of Kylo Ren issue 3. I hope you guys are enjoying this run as much as I am, and I am super sad that there is only one more chapter left, and I hope it's as thick as Ben Solo talking to Rey during a Force bond. Also, I feel like after this comic series ends, we will be talking about the tragedy of Ben Solo more than the tragedy of Darth Plagueis. I do get the frustration from folks who wanted Ben Solo to have a happily ever after. I'll admit it that I wish that he lived, but tragedy does have its place in Star Wars, and the fact that everybody is so shattered by his death in the films and this new backstory or this emerging backstory only means to me that this character is one of the best things to come to Star Wars since 1977. May the Force be with you. The AT-AT Chat is signing off.